Well, we know the man to answer all of these questions, and that is our good friend, Lions Talk by Chat Sports' own MicroMike. He'll be joining the program right now. Welcome to the
go.
look at the legend, MicroMike.
Hey,
Mike, it's good to see you. You were not kidnapped. He is officially returned. He is back at the
He's
HQ
out of
there.
Ukraine.
He's back at Ford Field, ladies and gentlemen. Back at
yeah, I
Ford
had to go
Field.
to Ukraine for a couple days apparently, and I'm back here at Ford Field in Detroit. So it's an
There you
honor
go.
to be on this show and actually at the real Ford Field.
Well, Mike, I'll start off and ask you. We were talking about Aiden Hutchinson and him, how he spoke to the media and some of the comments he had. One of them, it was about the next level he could potentially reach. I want your thoughts on just what a number in terms of sacks. What do you think Aiden Hutchinson can do this year? And also just the question that you saw his response to about needing help and he didn't really respond to it. What do you make of that? Two-part question.
Well, he's developing, and each year passes, he's getting better. Last year, he got better, specifically in the playoffs, where I think it was like the playoffs in the last couple of weeks. He had like, 8 sacks or something ridiculous amount just in a little bit of time. So for him, he's just got to continue to take that progress like other third-year players done, like Derek Barnes did last year. Ifutu Melifonwu kind of take a little bit step forward. I think his sack production is going to go significantly up because there's other players around him, like a DJ Reader. Ali McNeil's take a little bit step forward. So for me, I think he'll get above 15 sacks this year. I think that's something that we should look forward to. But that third-year jump, he should be taking, generally speaking, what other players get after the third year.
Yeah, Mike, I want to just full defensive side here. I think now that you've seen that they have addressed the corners and, a lot of these guys are going from, year 1, year 2 to year 3 and making that jump. What is your expectations? Do you think this defense with Terrion now getting added to it, Davenport getting added to it, do you think they can take that jump from going like, I think it was 25th overall defense all the way up to the top 10 to compete for the Super Bowl? And like, I keep saying this, Mike, I think the Super Bowl this year for the Detroit Lions runs through this defense. If they end up improving, you win the Super Bowl. Do you think they take that jump this season?
They better damn well take that jump this season because we have spent a lot of resources on that defense. And now Aaron Glenn, this is another year for him to take that defense that was 32, then 25 up to a significant higher. It has got to be top 16 at least for me here with Terrion Arnold and Carlton Davis. By the way, they're both having a pretty good time in OTAs so far. They have to. They just absolutely have to. You cannot spend the amount of resources that we have done in free agency and in the draft the last couple of years and have the 25th ranked defense. If it doesn't do that, then some changes must be made. It will take a jump. I do believe it's going to take a jump, specifically the pass defense, with more pressure from the defensive line and the new faces in the secondary. You should be getting a better secondary, more turnovers, and better coverage one-on-one because Cam Sutton was getting blown up. Carlton Davis is better. Terrion Arnold is really good. We're seeing it. And so this defense is going to get better, but it has to get better. I don't know if he'll get a top 10. I don't know about that, but it has to be a top one half of the NFL league. It has to be.
Yeah, and just completely flipping to the offensive side of the ball. Now, I really don't care about the defensive side when it comes to this question, but I've seen this a lot on social media. And it's comparing, Mike, I want to get your opinion on it. It's comparing Jared Goff and quarterbacks like Joe Burrow and Josh Allen because they're looking off production. But some people will be like, well, yeah, production is really all that matters because at the end of the day, if you can put up the numbers, who cares? Where do you stand on that when people are saying, well, Jared Goff, statistically, he's in the same tier as Joe Burrow and the likes of that?
Oh, man. Well, if they're putting him in Joe Burrow, I guess that's a pretty good little list right there because he's a good quarterback. But look, for me, when it comes to the quarterback position, I think a lot of people just fixating on stats. I like to look at a little bit different. Do you have that mentality to win the game in the toughest part of a game, 4th down and 2? Do you have the ability to win the big game when the pressure is on you? What do you do? And Jared Goff does do that. Now, look, he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not an athletic guy, or he is, it's got the biggest cannon like Matthew Stafford. But I think he is pretty damn elite when it comes to reading defense and distributing the football and calm in the biggest moments. And I think that we as fans of the NFL should really start to look at, can these guys win the big games? Because you're seeing Josh Allen. He is always in the top 5 as the greatest quarterbacks, this era, yet he doesn't win in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson, again, does not get it, and Mahomes beat him. And you get Jared Goff, all he does is win, right? He went with a with the Rams, he went to the Super Bowl. He's had many playoff games there. And then he comes here, he does the same thing. So I think that's a part of what we need to judge on a quarterback. Can they win in the big moments? Do they have ice in their veins? And that should be part of rankings for quarterbacks, in my opinion.
Look at that, Mike.
I
love it.
So wins their quarterback. I use wins as a quarterback stat. Clutch moments. I like that.
Yeah,
Mike,
it's always the clutch moments, right? So like the 4th and 2. How many times have we seen in the past before Detroit Lions like, yeah, this is not going to work. But now you have that confidence, and Jared Goff, he just does it. I mean, the first down in the Rams game, it was 2nd and 9. He throws it to St. Brown for the first down to win the game. That takes a lot of balls. That takes a lot of calming the nerves. I don't know if anybody you guys have ever went hunting for deer. You get buck fever, and when you see the deer, you start to breathe a little bit harder. You'd think when you're in a big game like Jared Goff, a quarterback in a playoff game, trying to win a playoff game, that you're going to have that type of feeling. Some of the players do, but he just doesn't have it, and I think you have to look at that as well.
One thing Dan Campbell did say that, I saw all over social media today was the sacks and the pressures and how he does, he certainly understands pressures, and he talked about how it does matter, because if you're pressuring a quarterback, he has to step up in the pocket. He's second guessing, he's making mistakes, and now they have an improved secondary to capitalize on those mistakes. Would you take away from what Dan said just with the sacks versus pressures, and what do you expect? Because we did a whole segment 2 weeks ago on Super Bowl teams that won the Super Bowl. And besides quarterback play, which is very important, and having a really good head coach, those two things are really important, and having a good defense, those are the 3 things you got to have. And with that good defense, Mike, comes a team that's typically, for the most part, top 5 in sacks. What'd you think of the sacks versus pressures thing that Dan Campbell brought up today?
I think they're both a valuable asset for sure, sacks and pressures. I think you can't just define one edge rusher off one or the other. We've seen situations where we've had Cliff Averill, who is really good at getting sacks, but you'd suck in other parts of his game, or we've seen that with James Houston. He's developing in the run game. I think we had 41 sacks last year. I'm not too worried about Aiden Hutchinson with getting the sacks, but can other people like a Marcus Davenport step up and help out, because he cannot do everything? Because if we're not getting on the opposite side, players are just going to go opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, and we have done that as a team as well. So look, you got to get those sacks too. It's very important. In the playoffs, Aiden Hutchinson was killing it. We had 2 sacks in each game. In the first 2 games, and that helped us win those games. So sacks do matter, but pressures are a big part as well, because that's where you can get the turnovers. If you force the quarterback to throw off his back foot because he is pressured, the inaccuracy of the football is going to go into one of the defender's hands. That's the whole point. So that's why the defensive line and secondary, they kind of mesh well. If you have a really good defensive line, the secondary is going to look a little bit better. If you have a butt cheeks defensive line, even though you have a really good secondary, it could look bad. So you got to have both. There needs to be that fine line. And I love the enthusiasm right now with Terrell Williams, the defensive line coach. If he can bring that out of them and get a little bit more sacks, I could agree with Dan Campbell, but it's yet to be seen.
Who do you think, Mike? Just sticking on that topic, because we did talk about it yesterday on our show, and we broke down Marcus Davenport, how many sacks we thought he would get. We did it with James Houston as well the last couple of days. Who do you think steps up in that defensive edge room? Do you think there's a surprise like that we're not talking about here? Mekhi Wingo maybe takes a step and goes outside more often than we think, or James Houston comes off that injury. And who do you think takes that step here for the Lions next year?
Damn, that's probably the biggest question we've been waiting for this offseason to figure out, and coming to the regular season. Can somebody step up? I don't know the answer for this one. I've been hearing a lot about Betts too. So the Matthew Betts, who we picked up, he's looking really good right now in OTAs, but we have not seen anybody go full pads. So it's hard to really see what the production level right now for the defensive line is. Can Joshua Pascal take that next step, right? No one talks about him. Can John Kaminsky recover from a bad last year? I don't know who's going to step up. I couldn't tell you. It's a tough one. I'm going to go with Betts. I'll say maybe he comes out of nowhere and produces a little bit better than we expect, but this is the biggest question mark of this whole offseason.
Matthew, he won the Matty bets. I love that. That
Like
is
it.
like
I love it.
he is probably the most talked about Lion on the defensive line in our chat, and I'm sure on your channel as well. I got a bet with Booner that he won't make the roster. I don't know if
He
Booner
may not.
Yeah, but Booner says there's a chance he could make that roster. I think he'll be a practice squad guy, so I'm interested to see.
Mike, I just think like the edge position, it's you got rid of the Okora brothers are gone, Charles Harris gone. You do like to me, I look at the edge, especially when you just have Hutch on the other side, like you're gonna need depth there. If you're gonna do it by committee, you need depth. And I don't know how good Betts is, but just by looking at the depth chart, that's a guy to where it's maybe he's like the fourth, fifth option, but like that's a position to me. It's like other positions you might not keep as much depth because you trust those guys up front. That's a position where it's like, hey, we might need depth because we don't really trust these guys as much as we do other position groups. That's my mindset on it.
I agree with you 110%. That's my stance on that right now is don't really know, right? These people got to step up. James Houston, he'd be getting 15 snaps a game, and he was stepping up with the 8 sacks his rookie year, and obviously he got injured. So, look, if we can have players like a Betts or a Houston or Marcus Davenport, they can go in and out throughout a game, and you're still getting high-level production off that edge, I'm fine with it. But somebody has got to step up, and you're right. They like Betts could be a good role player or he could be cut. We just don't know. I mean, this is what the biggest question mark is on this team is that who is going to step up because Romeo Okwara did it when he was here. Julian Okwara did it when he was here. Charles Harris didn't do it when he was here. So what the hell? Who is going to step up? And I want Marcus Davenport to step up because we signed him in free agency, but I am concerned about his injury history. Can he consistently be on the field? And can the Lions get the best out of him? I think the biggest question for all the defensive line who's going to step up is the new defensive lines coach. Can he get something out of these guys that wasn't happening the last couple of years? Because if he can, hell, maybe Kaminsky steps up significantly or somebody we don't expect, but his coaching is going to be vital towards the Lions defensive line and how it produces this year. And what we're hearing so far in OTAs is he's done a phenomenal job. And I think it's going to the production's going to go up, but we just don't know how much.
Yeah, and kind of switching it back to the defensive side, Mike, we got asked this question, I believe it was yesterday by the chat. Who do you think is going to be the starting 5 in the defensive back room with 2 safeties and three corners, or if you want to put Branches and nickel in that situation, what do you think the starting 5 corners and safeties will be?
Well, Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, and Amik Robertson, that's probably going to be your 1, 2, 3 at the corner position. Rakestraw will come in probably in the slot if there's an injury or something like that. So those 3 starters will be there. I think Afutu Malfonwu and Brian Branch probably going to be the other 2 starters with Kirby Joseph coming in quite a bit throughout the game, maybe situational, but I would look at those guys right now to be your starting secondary. And I think the biggest wild card here is Emmanuel Mosley because we picked him up last year to be the number 1 corner. He get injured. Now we re-sign him to a small deal and he is healthy. Can this guy actually, start to ascend up this depth chart and be an impact? That'll be the question mark for this season for the secondary, in my opinion.
Well, to stay on the secondary, I mean, you saw the report Terrion Arnold picked off Jared Goff, and Jared Goff went over there and gave him credit. I mean, he's clearly only getting better. What has that, and just the reporting in general, I know you can't just base it off a play, but just from what you've read about Terrion Arnold and how the coaches, players have been praising him, and obviously Lions fans are excited. What are your expectations for him this season? To be a starting corner, I mean, week 1, he's going to face Puka Nacua. So to take it from there on, what do you expect out of the rookie corner this year? Like how good can he be in your eyes?
I got to tell you what, man. Terrion Arnold is coming into a great situation because the secondary last year was butt cheeks. So any production that's a little bit better is going to look great towards Lions fans. I mean, when Puka Nacua 160 yards and then another 180 yards. So Terrion Arnold's coming in a situation where all you got to do is breathe, and he is better than the last year's secondary here. But for me, from when I look at Terrion Arnold expectations, I expect him to be a really good corner, but he's going to have rookie mistakes. And I'm not going to get too upset when it happens, specifically early on in the season. I just want to see him get better week in and week out. I have I think this guy is going to be the number 1 corner, for this football team. Probably like halfway through the season, you're going to start to see him really start to dominate is a player on the rise in the secondary. And that just like a Sutton over there in the Denver Broncos, he's a special player. He's fast, he's feisty, he turns his hips, and he's confident, likes that we haven't seen. And I think that is going to bode well for his future here in Detroit. He fits exactly the type of players they want here. A very confident, sound, a guy who practices really hard. All of the Lions type of players that they got. I think he's going to be great. But please, I just ask all the Lions fans, when he does get burned, and it's going to happen, or he slips, don't call him a bust like you did Aiden Hutchinson the first couple weeks he played in the NFL season. Same with Penei Sewell. It takes a little bit of time for rookies to really, develop into that solid contributor. He's going to have up and downs. Celebrate the ups and hope he learns from the downs.
Spot on, especially a rookie corner. That's like the toughest position to make that transition to the NFL. Other side of the ball, Mike, just Ben Johnson got asked this today about the weapons, losing Josh Reynolds, and he actually mentioned today, like he went back and watched film and was a little shocked just like how explosive Josh Reynolds actually was. And then he was asked about the replacement, who's going to get those snaps, and he brought up DPJ, he brought on Antoine Green, and he also brought up giving Gibbs more opportunities. Where do you see them going with that? Do you see them kind of bringing in a new weapon as well, or do you just say, hey, let's get DPJ going, let's get Antoine in there? Like, where do you stand on that whole situation replacing Josh Reynolds?
Josh Reynolds was high production. I'm shocked he didn't really believe, I didn't know how good he was. Well, if you watched, you definitely seen he was a big part of this Lions offense here. But in all honesty, when it comes to Ben Johnson, I am not too worried about the players right now. Let's see what they got, right? Isaiah Williams, they get as an undrafted. Antoine Green, you drafted to develop. Can one of these guys step up? Donovan Peoples-Jones, I do believe, is going to step up, right? I think Khalif Raymond's going to step up. Jamison Williams, we believe. And you're right about the Jahmyr Gibbs and Hughes on the backfield. So I don't think they need to add anybody right now. I really don't. Let's go through training camp, see what happens, see if anybody steps up. If not, if nobody is stepping up, other teams are going to cut down to 53, and maybe a Robert Woods or somebody out there that a team cut at a wide receiver that the Lions could use, kind of just like how we got Josh Reynolds. We picked him off the waiver wire. So I don't think the Lions are going to target anybody at this moment. I think they're okay with what they have. And look, if it continues to be fine, I think it's going to be fine. If not, they could bring in another player. But in all honesty, just try with what you have right now. That is the whole point of drafting Antoine Green last year. So maybe he can develop into a good player down the road. Well, guess it's year 2 for him. And I thought he did pretty good in preseason last year. So maybe he can come in and take a bigger jump and take that role over. If not, if no one else elevates their game, you can always add another player if someone gets cut. Or if they really wanted to do a trade, they could. I don't think they will at all. That's possible for this team if they want to get better upgrade at wide receiver.
Another question, someone in the chat asked yesterday, this is the last one I have for you, because I want your opinion on this with AG, and we talk about it a lot now with more pieces for him, and Dan Campbell was very complimentary of him today, and I think he has all the tools to be just a great head coach because of his leadership skills. Like that, and it's harder for defensive-minded head coaches to succeed, especially in today's league. Like you got to be great at hiring assistants. Like D'Amico Ryans has Bobby Slowick. He's one of the best OCs. So obviously Houston, and they have CJ Stroud. So they can have success. With AG as a defensive coordinator, though, all right, let's just stick with that. How much pressure is he under this year to get it right? And what's kind of the leash in your eyes for a guy like him who's been under scrutiny, but now has, there's still question marks, I think, on the edge. I mean, there has to be, but in totality, would you agree he has enough this year?
Boy, he is on a pan right now that's eggs boiling, like the dare to do drugs type of thing. Look, this defense has got to take a step forward, period. He's under a lot of pressure here because we invested a lot. If you actually look through free agency in the drafts the last couple of years since we started here, we've put a lot of assets to the defense, and it's just not taking that next step. So this year it has to be. Now, look, I can't blame Aaron Glenn everything. The secondary was terrible. A lot of players were just awful there, and it definitely hurt his production. He got better when he switched up with Iffy and having him get some pressure, and they got Vildor in there, and I think that's the sign of a good coach to identify a problem and try to fix it. Now he has the players. There is no excuse, well, we don't have the players. unless it's some crazy Moses, apocalyptic moment for Egypt as Moses trying to get his people out of there to find Israel at some point. He has to produce. Like, he really does. He has got to produce. And I think he definitely has a mentality for a head coach too, because he's a very calm individual. He seems like a leadership, but he's got to prove it right now this year. And I think a lot of Lions fans, I think a lot of individuals would be impatient if this defense is looking like it did last year and we're 25 through, I don't know, 6 games. Because if we're a bad defense already, and if there's 6 or 7 games, there is no reason at that point to keep him at that point. There's not, because you have put in a lot of resources, so he's got to make this defense better. But if the defense does take the progression like we think it's going to do, then he's good. But I'm going to give him about 6 weeks. If this defense is still butt cheeks, we're talking in the 20s, I'm seriously going to be pissed, man. Like, because look at Anthony Lynn. He lost his job halfway through the first season. They gave him just basically a half a season. And Aaron Glenn, this would be the year 4. So he's got to produce.
And I do want to say about Dan Campbell, it is impressive that throughout all the scrutiny with AG, and I was, I defended AG, and the biggest thing was the pieces he's had to work with. But Dan having that continuity, not just swapping out OC and DC. I mean, obviously Ben's been really great, and Aaron Glenn, Ben's had a lot of pieces to work with too, like Aaron Glenn has not. For him to keep AG, but then at the same time get rid of guys like Aubrey Pleasant or Anthony Lynn, like Dan he knows when it's time. He knows when the locker room, whoever it is, their voice is no longer heard. And AG was voted as one of the most popular coaches to play for among players. But you're right, Mike, he's got to produce. You got to be top 15. I think at the very minimum, you got to be top 15. So
would you like to have a coordinator that's super nice, but the offense blows? Or would you like to have a coordinator that's an a-hole and their offense is top 3? I will take the second one because I want to see these players succeed. But look, he is a good guy. I think he's got the tools now. Like, there's not really excuses. I think he is going to do well. And if this defense does take a step forward, then you got to wonder, maybe he gets a head coach after this year, right? So that would be nice, 2 third-round picks. But at the same time, we got to keep that continuity like you're talking about. And if something's not working out, you switch it out. Like Dre Bly, we let him go.
Right.
We bring in Williams for the defensive line, and it's just the way it is. This is the National Football League. It's a business, and you got to produce.
No question. We appreciate you, Mike, man. You always take time to join the program,
Sure.
and for that, we're forever grateful. You can check out Mike. Link will be in the description. Of course, you know who he is. Lions Talk by Chad Sports. Check out his stuff as well. Mike, we'll talk to you very soon, my friend. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Mike.
I don't know how many likes are on this stream right now, but let's hit it up right now. Get these guys to continue to ascend to the top of the YouTube world and beat out other competition. Smash that like button. Help these guys out. They're putting a lot of work in every single day, basically streaming. That's tough. Smash that for them.
Appreciate you, Mike. Let's go.
Mike, man. We love you, Mike. We appreciate you. You guys can check out his stuff, like I said, in the description, all stuff related to MicroMike. Man has always been. He's the GOAT. He is the GOAT. The pioneer. MicroMike.
See it. Next time this year, you better be like 50,000 subs.
Wait.
Let's go.
We're trying. We're trying to get to 10K, Mike. That's the goal. And we're about, 2,500. So, hey, because of people like you supporting the channel and all the people in the chat, man, we're getting close. So
for sure,
time.
you're going to do it, man. Peace out, guys.
Appreciate you, Mike.
Much love to you, Mike. There you go. Mike.